They told me to calm down, but how do you calm down when a man in a fake uniform is pounding on your door at 7 in the morning, yelling about government codes that don't even exist? I'll tell you right now, I felt trapped on my own street, like we'd wandered straight into one of those insane HOA horror stories, except this wasn't some online joke. This was real, and it was happening to us. We moved to Oak Ridge Estates because we thought it'd be the cure for our family crisis. My son Will, he's a federal marshal on leave after losing his mom to cancer. He just needed some peace and quiet, somewhere to put all that pain behind him. I figured what better place than a quiet little subdivision with neat lawns and folks who wave from their driveways. You know what I mean? Turns out all that calm just made it easier for chaos to spot us. 3 days after we'd finished unpacking, Brad Henderson showed up at our front door, 7 a.m. sharp, like he thought he was on some official mission. He had this badge that caught the light with a weird, cheap glare, should have been my first clue, and a uniform that looked good from far away, but something about it just felt off. The gun, though? Yeah, that part was real enough. Government safety inspection, he said, with that tone people use when they want you to just obey, not ask questions. He claimed he needed to verify our compliance with federal housing standards, stuff I'd never even heard of. When I asked to see his credentials, his hand slid toward his gun. Not to protect, but to intimidate. You really want to obstruct official business, he said, real slow, like he'd practiced those words in a mirror. Right then I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't quite pin it down. Was it the way he said jurisdiction? Like he wanted to sound official, but couldn't quite pull it off? Was it his posture, maybe just that gut feeling you get when someone's trying way too hard to sell you a lie? That's when Will stepped in quiet but sharp, like he always is, even when he's hurting. He eyed Brad up and down, every detail, badge stance, even the stitching on his uniform. What agency issued your authority? He asked, that calm investigator voice coming out even when he's not on duty. Brad blinked, stumbled for just a second, but then doubled down, claimed he had Homeland Security partnerships, tried to make us feel stupid for even asking. I remember thinking real federal agents don't show up unannounced for surprise inspections, especially not before breakfast. Brad left us with a $300 citation for inspection obstruction. Will didn't say much after that, just kind of stared at the paper, that look he gets when he's working a problem in his head. Later, he told me flat out, Dad, that badge is fake. The gun's real, but nothing else about him adds up. He rattled off a bunch of little details, the font on the badge, the way the uniform was put together, the cheap construction. Things most folks wouldn't notice, but a federal marshal does. So, I asked the obvious, should we call the cops? Will shook his head. If he really has a buddy at the station looking the other way, a complaint won't go anywhere. He said we needed evidence, solid, overwhelming evidence. That night, our neighbor Donna leaned over the fence, whispered her own story, 2 years of fines, threats, intimidation about immigration status. Nobody fights back anymore, she said. He's got people at the station who make problems disappear. Will decided right then to build a case unofficial, off the books, but bulletproof. He started documenting everything, photos, recordings, notes about Brad's patrols. The kitchen table turned into his command center. I watched him slip back into Marshal mode, pain and all charting movement patterns, tracking harassment, building timelines, and the more we learned, the worse it got. Brad wasn't just some wannabe tough guy. He was running a little fiefdom targeting the vulnerable, immigrant families, elderly folks, people too scared or too confused to stand up to him. Days turned into weeks, and we saw how Brad's operation went way past one guy playing dress-up. Mrs. Patterson across the street was afraid to leave her house after dark. The Martinez family were thinking about moving because Brad kept making threats about federal status. All lies, but terrifying if you don't know better. Will mapped it all. He even drew up a psychological profile. Dad, this isn't random harassment, he said. This is organized intimidation, psychological warfare designed to keep people silent. Will started what he called controlled escalation. Every time Brad came around, Will would ask just the right questions: badge number, agency, contacts, regulation codes, never aggressive, just persistent. Brad started bringing backup, Tim, a nervous neighbor. and sometimes a couple other guys in cheap tactical gear. He'd try to make it look like the whole community was behind him, like we were the weird ones for asking questions. But the more Will poked holes in his story, the sloppier Brad got. He even tried to flip the script, calling us obstructionists and threatening us with public shaming at HOA meetings. That's when Will pulled out the big guns, not literally, but with tactics only a federal marshal would think of. He emailed Brad, asked for a public meeting about community safety. Brad took the bait, figuring he could show off in front of everyone. But when the day came, Will was ready with recordings, documents, and a crowd that finally had enough. The confrontation was something else. Brad, Tim, and two new muscleheads in tactical outfits showed up on our lawn. I stepped outside, tried to keep my voice steady. "What seems to be the problem, Officer Henderson?" I said, putting just enough question in the title to make him sweat. He did his usual routine, hand on the gun, voice raised until Will calmly told him to produce real credentials. Brad's hand started to shake. Then boom, he drew his weapon. Right then and there, I called in a favor, someone I knew from my own years in law enforcement. Someone with federal reach, not just local. Within hours, the whole tone in the neighborhood changed. Unmarked cars started popping up, federal agents doing quiet interviews. Folks realized something big was going down. Next morning, Brad tried his last power play. Marched up to our mailbox, weapon drawn, screaming about citizen's arrest. But Will just stood there calm as anything and slowly lifted his shirt to show his real federal badge. "Deputy U.S. Marshal Will Harris," he said loud enough for every neighbor to hear. "And you just threatened a federal officer in front of multiple witnesses." The whole block went silent. Even the birds stopped. Brad's face, man. I wish you could have seen it. First confusion, then terror, then this desperate, whiny denial. Fake that badge is fake, as sirens came wailing down the street. Within minutes, local police showed up and Will got federal dispatch on the phone. His identity was confirmed live in front of everyone. Tim dropped his weapon and backed away, hands up. The two goons tried to blend into the crowd, but it was too late. Folks came out of their houses, some crying, some cheering, all of them relieved. For the first time in 2 years, people realized Brad was just a bully with a fake badge, nothing more. Brad kept ranting about entrapment and federal protection right up until the cuffs went on. But that was just the beginning. Federal agents raided his place and uncovered something wild. Servers, fake documents, encrypted emails, you name it. Turns out, Brad wasn't working alone. He was just one piece of a criminal franchise spanning 11 states, all running the same psychological manipulation playbook. Cryptocurrency, automated victim targeting, fake government documents. He was getting instructions from someone called Viktor Klov, a former Soviet intelligence officer running a psychological warfare racket across North America. Will's evidence, his notes, his behavioral profiles, his recordings, cracked the whole thing wide open. The feds coordinated raids in 3 countries, Canada, Mexico. The U.S. arrested 24 more operators, seized millions in assets, and started restitution for thousands of families. The community garden that replaced Brad's house stands where his headquarters of fraud used to be. Mrs. Patterson finally got the medical care she needed. The Martinez family bought their first home, and our street is full of kids again, playing laughing riding bikes past the garden where Brad's fake empire once stood. Brad got 18 years in federal prison for racketeering, impersonating federal officers, and threatening real ones. His boss got even more. Tim, who turned witness, now helps other fraud victims find their way back to normal. Willie went back to active marshal duty, training agents to spot and dismantle these networks before they can do real harm. So here's my question for you. If you found out your HOA president was really just a con artist with a fake badge and a little power trip, would you fight back or just pay the fine and hope he'd go away? Leave your thoughts below and tell me, has your community ever faced anything like this? Drop a comment, share your story, or just let us know you're out there. Because sometimes the only thing standing between you and real justice is a neighbor who refuses to stay silent. Stay safe, y'all. And next time someone bangs on your door before sunrise, maybe double check the badge before you start writing checks.